It's 11:45 at night. Rain is hitting the windows of a small diner on the edge of a quiet American town. The lights are flickering. Most of the customers have already gone home. Only one waitress is left, wiping down the counter, counting the minutes until her shift ends. Her name is Sarah Miller. She's 26 years old. She has exactly $14 in her pocket, a rent payment due in 3 days, and a mother back home who needs medicine she can barely afford. Then the bell above the door rings. A man walks in. His coat is soaked. His shoes are expensive, but his eyes look tired, almost broken. He sits in the corner booth, alone, and orders the cheapest thing on the menu, a cup of coffee and a plain sandwich. Sarah doesn't know it yet, but the man sitting in that booth is Ethan Cole, 34 years old, owner of one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. A man worth more than $4 billion. And by the end of that night, her life, and his, will never be the same again. This is the story of how a billionaire fell in love with a poor waitress. Not because of her money, because she had none. Not because of her name, because nobody knew it. But because of one simple thing she did that night, something no one had done for him in years. Stay with me till the end, because the final twist in this story is something you will not see coming. Let's rewind a little bit so you understand exactly who Sarah Miller was before that rainy night changed everything. Sarah grew up in a small town in Ohio. Her father passed away when she was just 16. Since then, it had been her mother, and a mountain of bills that never seemed to shrink no matter how hard she worked. She was smart. Genuinely smart. Teachers used to say she could have gone to any college she wanted. But when her father died, college became a dream she folded up and put away in a drawer, the same way you put away a photograph you're not ready to look at yet. Instead, she worked. She worked mornings at the diner. She worked evenings cleaning offices. On weekends, she picked up shifts babysitting for neighbors. She wasn't chasing a fortune. She was just trying to keep the lights on and make sure her mother's heart medication didn't run out. People in town knew her as the waitress with the tired smile. She always smiled at customers, always remembered how they liked their coffee, always asked about their day. But underneath that smile was a woman who hadn't taken a single day off in 8 months, who ate her own dinner standing up in the diner's back kitchen because she couldn't afford to sit down anywhere else. Sarah had learned a long time ago not to dream too big. Big dreams, she believed, were for people who had the luxury of time. And time was the one thing she never had enough of. That night, as the rain poured outside and the diner emptied out, she had one thought in her head: 3 more days until rent is due, and she still needed $40 more than she had. She had no idea that the man walking through the door in the next few seconds would change every single thing about her life. Now let's talk about the man in the corner booth. Ethan Cole did not look like someone worth $4 billion. He looked like a man who hadn't slept properly in weeks. And that's because he was. 3 years earlier, Ethan had built a technology company from nothing, in his college dorm room, with 2 friends and a laptop that kept crashing every 20 minutes. That company had exploded into one of the most valuable startups in the country. Investors loved him. Magazines put him on their covers. People called him the golden boy of Silicon Valley. But here's what those magazines never showed you. 6 months before that rainy night, Ethan's fiancée had left him, not because she stopped loving him, she said, but because she couldn't handle a life where every dinner was interrupted by a phone call, every vacation was cut short by an emergency meeting, and every conversation somehow circled back to the company. His 2 co-founders, the same friends who had built the dream with him, had recently pushed him out of day-to-day decisions in a boardroom vote he never saw coming. Officially, he was still the CEO. Unofficially, he felt like a stranger in his own company. And his father, the one person whose approval he had spent his whole life chasing, had passed away just 2 months earlier without ever once telling Ethan he was proud of him. So that night, Ethan did something his driver and his assistant would have been shocked to see. He told his driver to stop the car. He got out in the pouring rain, with no security, no phone calls, no cameras. He just wanted, for 1 hour, to feel like an ordinary man again. That's how he ended up in a small diner on the edge of town, sitting in a corner booth, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu, not because he needed to save money, but because for the first time in years, he wanted to feel normal. He had no idea that the waitress about to take his order would remind him what being human actually felt like. Sarah walked over with her notepad, the same tired smile on her face. "Long night?" she asked, not really expecting an answer. Most customers just grunted or stared at their phones. But Ethan looked up, and for a second, something in his face softened. "You could say that," he replied. She took his order, black coffee, a grilled cheese sandwich, and walked away. Nothing unusual happened yet. Just a waitress and a customer, like 1,000 other nights. But then, about 20 minutes later, something did happen. Ethan's phone rang. He looked at the screen, saw his company's chief financial officer's name, and simply turned the phone face down on the table without answering it. His hands were shaking slightly. Sarah noticed. She always noticed things about her customers. It was part of the job, part of who she was. She walked back over, not to take another order, but just to refill his coffee. "You don't have to talk about it," she said quietly, setting the cup down. "But sometimes it helps just to sit somewhere nobody's expecting anything from you." Ethan looked at her, genuinely surprised. Nobody had said anything like that to him in years. Everyone around him wanted something, a signature, a decision, a strategy, an investment. This woman, who clearly had every reason in the world to be exhausted and short-tempered herself, was offering him a moment of peace, expecting absolutely nothing in return. "Rough week?" he asked her back, turning the question around. Sarah laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carries more tiredness than humor. "Rough year," she admitted. "But you learn to keep moving. Standing still doesn't pay the bills." They talked for almost 45 minutes that night. Ethan didn't tell her who he was. She didn't ask. To her, he was just a tired man in a wet coat. To him, she was the first honest conversation he'd had in longer than he could remember. When he finally stood up to leave, he left enough cash on the table to cover the bill. But he also did something else. He left a $100 bill tucked under the coffee cup, along with a small note that said, "Thank you for treating me like a person tonight. That mattered more than you know." Sarah found the note after he left. She stood there in the empty diner, holding that $100 bill, completely unaware that the man who left it controlled a business empire worth billions. She thought she would never see him again. She was wrong. Ethan came back 3 days later. Then the next week. Then almost every few days after that. He never came in a fancy car. He always parked 2 streets away and walked, the same way he had that first rainy night. He didn't want Sarah to know who he really was, not yet. He wanted, just for a little while longer, to be seen as a person and not a bank account. Over the following weeks, something quiet and real started growing between them. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie montage. It was small moments. Sarah remembering that Ethan liked his coffee black with exactly 1 sugar. Ethan noticing that Sarah always got quieter on the days her mother had a doctor's appointment, and asking gently if everything was okay. One evening, Sarah mentioned, almost as a joke, that she hadn't taken a single day off in 8 months. Ethan didn't laugh. He just looked at her seriously and said, "You should. Everyone deserves at least 1 day where nobody needs anything from them." She told him that people who worked minimum wage jobs didn't really get that luxury. He didn't respond to that. He just filed it away in his mind, the way a man does when something bothers him deeply but he isn't ready to act on it yet. As weeks turned into a couple of months, Sarah began to notice things too. The way Ethan spoke about difficult decisions, and the board, and the company, even though he never gave details. The expensive quality of his coat, even though it always looked slightly wrinkled, like he didn't care much for appearances. The way, once, a stranger in the parking lot had whispered, "Isn't that the tech guy from the news?" And Ethan had quickly gotten into a cab and left. She started to suspect that the man she had grown fond of was not who he first appeared to be. And then, one night, everything came out into the open. 2000 hours, 26:00, the truth comes out. It happened on a Friday evening. The diner was busier than usual. Sarah was juggling 6 tables at once when a group of young men walked in, laughing loudly, phones out, clearly filming something. "No way," one of them said, pointing straight at Ethan's booth. "That's literally Ethan Cole, the CEO. That's the $4 billion guy." Sarah froze mid-step, holding a tray of dishes. Ethan looked up, and for the first time since they had met, he didn't try to hide. He simply nodded at the men, asked them politely to lower their voices, and turned to look at Sarah with an expression that was somewhere between guilt and relief. The look of a man who had been carrying a secret for far too long, and was almost glad it was finally out. After her shift ended that night, Sarah sat down across from him, her apron still on, arms crossed. "You could have told me," she said quietly. Not angry. Just hurt. "I know," Ethan admitted. "But every single person I meet wants something from me the second they find out who I am. Investment. Connections. Introductions. Money. I just wanted one place, one person, where none of that was true." Sarah sat in silence for a long moment. Then she said something that stayed with Ethan for the rest of his life. "I never wanted anything from you except conversation," she said. "And now I feel foolish for not seeing it. But it doesn't change what those talks meant to me." That night, walking her to her car in the parking lot, Ethan told her the whole truth: the broken engagement, the boardroom betrayal by his own co-founders, his father's death, the loneliness that came with being surrounded by people yet trusted by almost none of them. Sarah listened without judgment. And for the first time, Ethan felt like someone finally saw the man underneath the billionaire, and didn't run toward the money or away from the baggage. She simply stayed. Of course, a story like this doesn't move forward without resistance. Real love, even a story this unusual, comes with real problems. When word got out that Ethan Cole was seeing a waitress from a small-town diner, the media exploded. Headlines called her a gold digger. Photographers waited outside the diner. Strangers online who had never met either of them wrote cruel comments about Sarah, guessing at motives she never had. Ethan's own board of directors, the same co-founders who had pushed him out of major decisions, used the situation to question his judgment publicly, hinting that dating a random waitress made him look unstable to investors. Sarah, for her part, faced her own pressure. Friends warned her she was setting herself up to get hurt. "Men like that don't marry women like us," one coworker told her bluntly. "He'll get bored, and you'll be the headline that everyone forgets in 6 months." There was a night, about 10 weeks into their relationship, when Sarah almost walked away entirely. A tabloid published a fabricated story claiming she had asked Ethan for a large sum of money. It wasn't true, not a single word of it, but the damage was already spreading online before she even saw the article herself. She called Ethan in tears, telling him she couldn't keep living like this, that she didn't sign up to be picked apart by strangers for something she never did. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't tell her to toughen up. Instead, he did something that surprised her completely. He issued a public statement himself, correcting the false story, and for the first time, publicly confirmed that Sarah Miller was someone he deeply respected and cared about, regardless of what anyone thought. It was a small gesture on paper, but it meant everything. He wasn't hiding her anymore. He wasn't ashamed. He was standing next to her, in public, for the whole world to see. That single choice told Sarah something she needed to know for certain. This wasn't a fling, and it wasn't charity. It was real. The real turning point in this story didn't come from a grand romantic gesture. It came from something much quieter. A few months later, Sarah's mother's health took a sudden turn for the worse. She needed a surgery that Sarah could never have afforded on her own, no matter how many extra shifts she picked up. Sarah didn't ask Ethan for a single dollar. In fact, she almost didn't tell him at all, terrified it would look exactly like the accusation the tabloids had already thrown at her. But Ethan found out anyway, through a worried phone call Sarah made to a friend, one he happened to overhear. Without saying a word to Sarah, he quietly arranged for her mother to be seen by one of the best specialists in the state, and made sure the surgery happened immediately, before it became an emergency. When Sarah found out what he had done, she was furious at first, not because she wasn't grateful, but because she was terrified people would say she had finally gotten what she wanted, all along. Ethan sat her down and said something simple but powerful. "This was never a transaction, Sarah. I didn't do this because I expect anything back. I did it because I love you, and I couldn't watch someone I love suffer when I had the power to help. That's not charity. That's what people who care about each other do." That moment changed everything. Sarah realized that the fear she carried, the fear of being seen as someone who only wanted his money, had almost stopped her from accepting real love when it was standing right in front of her. From that point forward, she stopped apologizing for loving him. And he stopped hiding pieces of his life from her. Ethan proposed on an ordinary Tuesday evening, in the very same diner where they first met. No cameras. No massive crowd. Just Sarah, still in her work apron, and Ethan getting down on one knee beside the same corner booth where he once sat alone in the rain. "You didn't fall in love with my money," he told her. "You didn't even know I had any. You fell in love with the version of me that had nothing to offer but conversation and honesty. I want to spend the rest of my life being that version of myself with you." They got married about 6 months later. It wasn't the massive billionaire spectacle the tabloids expected. Sarah insisted on a small ceremony, close friends, her mother, now recovering well, and a handful of people who had actually mattered through the hard years, including 2 of her old co-workers from the diner. Ethan's business rivals called it beneath him. Gossip columns speculated it wouldn't last a year. But those who actually knew the couple saw something different. 2 people who had each been broken in their own way, who found in each other something money could never buy, to be loved for exactly who they were, without conditions. Sarah didn't quit working entirely either. Instead, using a portion of the resources now available to her, she started a foundation that helped service workers, waitresses, cooks, cleaners, access emergency medical funds and educational scholarships, so that no one else would have to choose between rent and their mother's medicine, the way she once had. So, what can we really take away from the story of the billionaire and the poor waitress? It's easy to assume this is simply a fairy tale about luck, a poor woman who happened to be at the right diner at the right time. But if you look closely, the real story isn't about money at all. It's about the fact that Ethan Cole, a man with more wealth than he could ever spend, was still starving for something no amount of money could buy, to be seen, valued, and accepted without conditions attached. And it's about Sarah Miller, a woman with almost nothing in her bank account, who still had more than enough kindness, patience, and honesty to offer someone who needed it, without even knowing what he was worth. This story reminds us that real connection has very little to do with the size of someone's bank account, and everything to do with the size of their character. The richest people in the world can still feel completely alone. And the people working the hardest, most invisible jobs can carry more genuine warmth than anyone realizes. Kindness, it turns out, doesn't check your bank balance before it changes your life. So, to sum it all up, a tired billionaire walked into a small diner one rainy night, looking for nothing more than a quiet moment away from a life that had left him lonely. A waitress with $14 to her name gave him something priceless: honesty, kindness, and a conversation with no strings attached. What started as 2 broken people finding comfort in each other turned into a love strong enough to survive public judgment, family pressure, and every obstacle placed in front of it. If this story taught you anything today, let it be this: never underestimate the power of a little kindness, and never assume that someone's current situation defines their true worth. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Because every single day, we share real, inspiring stories about love, life, and second chances that you won't want to miss. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.